Horizon Gents, Reacts, and this is History of Russia, Part 1 by the channel Epic History TV. Russia Part 1 traces the origin of modern Russia and Ukraine among Slavic tribes, Viking raiders, and the medieval kingdom of Kievan Rus. Mongol hordes brought death and destruction, but under the first Tsar, a strong Russian state slowly emerged. After the Mongols basically, just had one of the biggest empire ever, so Russia started to, basically get its strength back slowly, right, with the Tsars and everything. So this is going to be a fun video. I love Epic History TV, right? They make great content, great historical content. I read through the whole Napoleonic series and it was just awesome. I still have to do, 2 or 3 parts of Napoleon's Marshal, I guess. So yeah, let's watch this one.
For thousands of years, the lands known today as Russia and Ukraine were inhabited by nomadic tribes and mysterious Bronze Age cultures. The only record they left were their graves. In the great open grasslands of the south, the steppe, they buried their chieftains beneath huge mounds called kurgans. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus called these people Scythians. Their lands were overrun by the same nomadic warriors who brought down the Roman Empire.
Huns didn't brought down the Roman Empire. Huns just came, talked to the Pope, and fucked off.
The land was then settled by Slavs. They shared some language and culture, but were divided into many different tribes. Vikings from Scandinavia, known in the east as Varangians, rode up Russia's long rivers on daring raids and trading expeditions. According to legend, the East Slavs asked a Varangian chief...
Yeah, we know how many rivers are there, right? Because China's trying to create some kind of a system here. Because, it's so many rivers that go inland is great for the trading routes. From there, I realized that, holy shit, there are so many rivers connecting to the places. That's how Vikings went about, I guess.
Chief named Rurik to be their prince and unite the tribes. He accepted and made his capital at Novgorod. His dynasty, the Rurikids, would rule Russia for 700 years. His people called themselves the Rus and gave their name to the land. Rurik's successor, Oleg, captured Kiev, making it the capital of a new state, Kievan Rus. A century later, seeking closer ties with the Byzantine Empire to the south, Vladimir the Great adopted their religion and converted to Orthodox Christianity. He is still venerated today as the man who brought Christianity to Ukraine and Russia. Yaroslav the Wise codified laws and conquered...
Wait a minute, in Soviet Union, right, lots of them were atheists, so how many portion of Russians right now are religious? Because I know there are, really famous, religious, different type of churches and things that there are, right? But how many of them are religious right now? I don't know. It must be low since in Soviet Union so many were atheists, I guess.
New lands. His reign marked the golden age of Kievan Rus. It was amongst the most sophisticated and powerful states in Europe. But after Yaroslav's death, his sons fought amongst themselves. Kievan Rus disintegrated into a patchwork of feuding princedoms, just as a deadly new threat emerged from the east. The Mongols under Genghis Khan had overrun much of Asia.
Oh shit,
Now
Temujin's here.
they launched a great raid across the Caucasus Mountains and defeated the Kievan princes at the Battle of the Kalka River, but then withdrew. 14 years later, the Mongols returned. A gigantic army led by Batu Khan overran the land. Cities that resisted were burnt, their people slaughtered.
People slaughter. We know how Mongols used to slaughter people, and they were really fucking efficient at that, so that was a pretty bad time, I guess. Lots of people died, right? Lots of population don't exist because Mongols killed people. Let's just say that's how the scale of that thing is. And it is really, interesting to think that Mongols can trace their heritage to the Huns, basically, which was kind of similar. And similarly, in mass number taking over places, they had the similar type of, strategy, I guess.
The city of Novgorod was spared because it submitted to the Mongols. Its prince, Alexander Nevsky, then saved the city again, defeating the Teutonic Knights at the Battle of the Ice, fought above a frozen lake. He remains one of Russia's most revered heroes. The Mongols ruled the land as conquerors. Their new empire was called the Golden Horde, ruled by a Khan from his new capital at Sarai. The Rus princes were his vassals. They were forced to pay tribute or suffer devastating reprisal raids. They called their oppressors Tatars. They lived under the Tatar yoke. Alexander Nevsky's son, Daniel, founded the Grand Principality of Moscow, which quickly grew in power. Under the great Uzbek Khan, the Tatars converted to Islam. A rising power, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania defeated the Tatars at the Battle of Blue Waters and conquered.
So Mongols were not, Islamic from the start, huh? I mean, yeah, kind of makes sense with everything that I've seen about Mongols. But yeah, along the way they did.
Kiev. 18 years later, Dmitry Donskoy, Grand Prince of Moscow, also defeated the Tatars at the Great Battle of Kulikova Field. After years of infighting, the Golden Horde now began to disintegrate into rival khanates. Constantinople, capital and last outpost of the once great Byzantine Empire, fell to the Turkish Ottoman Empire. Some hailed Moscow as the Third Rome.
Yeah, so Constantinople, around this time, fell for the first time in, I guess, 1,000 or so years, right? I mean, there was sieges along the way, but none of them were successful. This is the first time it fell to the Ottoman Empire. At the same time, Mongols were basically, got destroyed, right? And into different sections. I mean, that is the trend I see with lots of empire of the past. Not all of them, but once a great empire usually gets disintegrated into small ones, because apparently there is no one guy who has the vision to basically hold all those people together, so they all basically seek their own interest one way or another and get separated. That's the trend I see. So when everything is just going great, obviously nobody's gonna break out and create their own khanate or something, right? They will be all part of the Golden Horde. But when things starts to look grim, it's not so great anymore, and there is no one leader that can hold everybody together. Shit like this happens. That we've seen that a lot of times.
The seat of Orthodox Christian faith, now Rome and Constantinople, had fallen. Meanwhile, the Grand Princes of Moscow continued to expand their power, annexing Novgorod and forging the first Russian state. At the Ugra River, Ivan III of Moscow faced down the Tatar army and forced it to retreat. Russia had finally cast off the Tatar yoke. Under Grand Prince Vasily III, Moscow continued to grow in size and power. His son, Ivan IV, was crowned the first Tsar of Russia.
Ivan the Terrible. So let me get this straight. Either he wasn't a good ruler, that's why he's the Terrible, or he was really brutal, that's why his name is the Terrible. I guess we'll see.
He would be remembered as Ivan the Terrible. Ivan conquered Tatar lands in Kazan and Astrakhan, but was defeated in the Livonian War by Sweden and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Ivan's modernizing reforms gave way to a reign of terror and mass executions, fueled by his violent paranoia. Russia was still vulnerable. Raiders from the Crimean Khanate were...
Yeah, there you go. That's why he was the Terrible, because, his ideas were fucked up. But at least history tells us that sometimes fucked up people like that comes, Ivan the Terrible. At least they're fucked up enough to defeat their enemy and take over some land. So I guess, I don't know, Russia at least gained some land from the, basically Tatars.
Able to burn Moscow itself. But the next year, Russian forces routed the Tatars at Molody, just south of the city. Cossacks now lived on the open steppe, a lawless region between three warring states. They were skilled horsemen who lived freely and were often recruited by Russia and Poland to fight as mercenaries. Ivan the Terrible's own son, the Tsarevich, fell victim to one of his father's violent rages, bludgeoned to death with the royal scepter.
What? Guy's crazy.
The Cossack adventurer Yermak Timofeyevich led the Russian conquest of Siberia, defeating Tatars and subjugating indigenous tribes. In the north, Arkhangelsk was founded, for the time being Russia's only seaport linking it to Western Europe, though it was icebound in winter. Ivan the Terrible was succeeded by his son, Fyodor I, who died childless. It was the end of the Rurikid dynasty.
Oh, okay.
Ivan's advisor, Boris Godunov, became Tsar. But after his sudden death, his widow and teenage son were brutally murdered, and the throne seized by an impostor claiming to be Ivan the Terrible's son. He too was soon murdered. Russia slid into anarchy, the so-called Time of Troubles. Rebels and foreign armies laid waste to the land, and the population was decimated by famine and plague. Polish troops occupied Moscow. Swedish troops seized Novgorod.
Oh shit, at the start of the 17th century, Russia basically got fucked. Only because they had no clear leader, right? And obviously as soon as the last lineage of the original dynasty died, people start to get ideas, right? The advisor, whoever the guy was basically who took over as the king, emperor, whatever, obviously people suddenly plotted to kill him, his wife, his teenage son, and it's just everything went to chaos. And obviously when you don't have a stable leader, right, the state's nation goes to instability and shit like this happens.
The Russian state seemed on the verge of extinction.
Alright, so I guess Rus dynasty, right, which ended, we just saw with the last guy. After that, everything fell apart. But at least, this gives me one answer, like why Russia is, so wide from, west to east the way it is right now. It's because around the Moscow, obviously, that's where it first started, right? The Russia first started there. But it started to expand in the east because of the Mongols. Because Mongols were there was, basically fighting and just, Russian kings basically just, drive them off and just took all lands and just expanded into the east. So Mongol is the reasons that why, Mongols are the reason why the Russia is so wide like that. Damn. All right. And in 17th century, Russia fell into anarchy, I guess. All right. That was great. I guess, I'm still going to, have fun in, I guess, one of the last parts where, obviously Peter the Great, I guess, will found St. Petersburg and all things like that. Catherine the Great, I guess, she's going to get mentioned here. So yeah. Alright people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe, check out the reaction, there's a link in the description. Check out the cards for place, everything cards, and yeah, I'll see you next time.